One of the best new characters to come out of 1978's Star Wars The Holiday Special was Ackmena, the nighttime bartender at Chalmun's Cantina in Mos Eisley. Portrayed by the fabulous Bea Arthur, she wards off the advances of someone, and she gets everyone to leave in time for the Imperial curfew by breaking out into song and getting them to march out the door. And that could have been the last we saw of Ackmena, but out of nowhere she appears in book number 5 of the Fate of the Jedi series, Allies. We learn that in the intervening years she became a performer. She has since returned to Tatooine and is moonlighting as a bartender again, and also working for Freedom Flight, the Star Wars universe's version of the Underground Railroad. Fate of the Jedi Allies by Christie Golden ultimately made it to number 8 on the New York Times bestseller list for the week of June 13th, 2010, and was ultimately on the list for 2 weeks. Going into Allies, all I knew was that Luke and Ben Skywalker wanted to go back to the Maw to confront Abeloth and see if she was connected with this string of madness among the young Jedi. And the title Allies implied that they might be finding themselves on the same side as, well, some unexpected folk. So, a brief summary. As the difficult situation between the Jedi and the Galactic Alliance on Coruscant only continues to get worse and worse, Luke Skywalker and his son Ben are confronted with strange new allies in the form of the lost tribe of the Sith that Vestara Kai belongs to. They say that Abeloth is now affecting their younglings as well. But can the Skywalkers trust these newfound allies? So on the Fate of the Jedi using elements from the Odyssey front, I didn't really notice anything new here. Although the navigation to Abeloth's planet in the Maw is very difficult, so maybe shades of Scylla and Charybdis again, but we've seen that in almost every book thus far. So, the plot. Picking up where that cliffhanger left off at the end of Backlash, the Sith fleet confront the Skywalkers as they attempt to leave Dathomir, but they don't want to attack them, they want to ally with them. The Sith say that Abeloth is affecting their younglings as well, and that they also want to go to the Maw and confront Abeloth and take her out. And Luke agrees to this alliance, but he is not trusting of them at all. So he suggests that they don't enter the Maw until they have one of Lando's ships that would make navigation easier, and let's all meet up at Klaatuine while Lando tries to fix up this old asteroid buster. While waiting on Klaatuine, we get the first inklings of a subplot that really comes out of nowhere, which is the galaxy is struggling beneath the yoke of slavery, and these people want to be freed. And in the case of the people on Klaatuine, they've been in slavery to the Hutts for 25,000 years. And the only thing holding them to this agreement is that the Hutts have agreed to protect this fountain of the ancients that's full of glass and very rare and valuable and a beautiful sight. Dion Stad, the Force-sensitive man that helped them on Dathomir and is continuing on with the Skywalkers on their journey, he, as someone who also spent time in that Jedi shelter in the Maw, goes mad, and he goes running towards the Fountain of the Ancients, and Ben and Vestara stop him. Of course, the Sith being Sith, they decide that they want to steal the glass from the fountain, and, well, you could guess that chaos ensues on Klaatuine, and then it spreads to the rest of the galaxy as well. And so we have a subplot where a reporter who works for the newscaster who Han and Leia and Alana like to watch is going around the galaxy learning about freedom flight and these places where uprisings against slavery are happening. Meanwhile, the Sith do have nefarious schemes, and Vestara's father, Gavar Kai, tells her that maybe you can seduce Ben Skywalker to the dark side. And so Ben and Vestara get closer because, you know, they're both 16-year-olds. And a real friendship starts to be forming until the Skywalkers find out what the Kais said behind their back, and then Ben is much more suspicious of her. Over on Coruscant, after trying to open negotiations with the Jedi, it seems like that just completely fell through, and now with 2 more Jedi going mad, and one of them very publicly so, Daala's back to, I want custody of these Jedi. And she sends Mandalorian mercenaries to attack the temple. Again, on this case, they don't just attack it, they surround it. They kill an apprentice who comes out to negotiate with them, and the situation looks real darn bad there. Jaina goes to Jagged Fell seeking help from the Imperial Remnant, and he says, I'm sorry, we can't. We're still trying to negotiate a place in the Galactic Alliance ourselves, and so the engagement is over. They have broken off. Jaina runs off to Tatooine to help her Uncle Luke, and she and Lando end up being the judges to decide if the Hutts failed in protecting the Fountain of the Ancients. They rule no, but the slavery uprising still happens. Before they broke up, though, Jag did find a lawyer for Tahiri Vela, so her trial is going underway. It looks like her lawyer, who is the uncle of the Bothan Admiral Buatu, is doing a really good job, and the jury is definitely feeling sympathetic for her until they have an audio recording of Admiral Palayan's death. Came from Daala because Palayan called Daala, and it definitely turned the tide against her. And then over on the Jedi-Sith Alliance front, they finally set out for the Maw. They go to Abeloth's planet. Luke wants to go to that River of the Dead again to commune with Mara, because also he did see Abeloth in the mists, and he sees Mara, and he realizes in talking to her that this ghostly presence that he has sensed on the Jade Shadow has not been Mara's spirit. And one of the Sith, in fact the Sith who planned that attack on the Fountain of the Ancients, she gets dragged down by, I guess, spirits she wronged, so that river is not innocuous after all. Vestara lets Dion Stod go, and they follow him to Abeloth, and they find that Abeloth has in the past taken the body and spirit, I guess, of Callista Ming, because she presents herself both as the Clone Wars era Callista as well as Callista after she took over Cray Mingla's body. And she's like, oh, Luke, we can be reunited. And Luke's like, what? Callista? And then he realizes, no, you're not Callista anymore, you're Abeloth. A fight ensues, Vestara is injured, and then Abeloth runs off, and she gets Dion again, and Luke comes up and he kills Abeloth with his lightsaber. And the Sith decide, along with Luke, that they want to stay on Abeloth's planet a little longer and figure out, you know, what is she? Where did she come from? What's her deal? And I can't help feeling that her death came a little too easy, and I'm not sure we've seen the last of her. So let's switch it up this time and talk about all the goings-on Coruscant first. After attempting discussions with the Jedi in the previous book and using Han and Leia as a go-between, Daala swings back towards not being as much of a nuanced character as I would like, and she's totally like, give me the Mad Jedi! And they're like, can we talk about this? And she's like, give me the Mad Jedi! And when that doesn't work, she sends Mandalorian mercenaries. And girl, if you're worried about your public image and you are aware of the fact that people are twisting the narrative against you, why would you do something like that? And not just to let Mandalorian mercenaries hold the Jedi Temple under siege, but let them shoot a Jedi apprentice and just leave her dead body on the stairs. Daala coming down on the side of planets that perpetuate slavery, being like, yeah, it's a problem, but we got bigger problems to deal with, and I'm gonna side with them because law and justice. And I just find it very strange that Daala is the character doing that here, because in Darksaber, she was opening the Empire up to non-humans and women and trying to make it more inclusive. And so to have her be the viewpoint character that is saying like, yeah, slavery's bad, but we can't deal with it right now, so we're gonna let planets keep enforcing it, just boggles me. I feel like maybe not the character I would have chosen to espouse those views, especially considering her past actions here. Han and Leia conveniently are not in the temple when that attack happens, so they're able to secretly send in medicines and such and support the Jedi the best they can. I did feel like the way that the Jedi Masters were making fun of the apprentice who was Kenneth Hamner's assistant was really juvenile and frankly rude. It says that Han started it by calling her Kenneth's pet, or KP, but then we've got people like Kype doing it, and it's like, how old are you? Like, just cut it out. I can understand feeling anger and resentment towards Kenneth and how he's dealing with the situation, but to take that out on a Padawan who is not part of this in any way and is just doing what she's being told to do is just, frankly, rude teenage behavior, and I expect better of them. And I do feel like too, Kenneth is stuck between a rock and a hard place, that he just brings up the very concept of, well, if we hand these Jedi over, but we say that we need to still observe them, the Jedi Masters are like, no! How dare you, Kenneth? And it just further reiterates to me that he was the wrong person to choose to lead the Jedi Order. But then I'm not sure that anyone other than Luke could lead them right now, because they're just completely dysfunctional, and it just, again, boggles my mind to see adults behaving this way. Like, you should be stepping up and being leaders, and instead you're just squabbling all the time. And this is not making the situation any better here. I found the development in Jag and Jaina's relationship, where Jaina's like, we're two different people, this isn't gonna work out, and here's your ring back, bye. Frustrating, because Jaina, did you not realize that when you accepted his proposal? Like, Jag is Mr. Imperial Honor, and he's gonna do as much as he can to help you out, but like, he has definite limits, and asking him to send a fleet to Luke is like beyond what he would be able to do. And I know they get back together, but it's just like, to a certain extent it feels like drama for the sake of drama, like charting the course of their relationship since the new Jedi Order is like, they get together and then they break up, and then the Swarm Wars happen, and then Jag loses everything. And then they're like friends again, and now they're in a relationship and they get engaged, and then the Solos are mad at him, and now they're broken up because they have different priorities. And it's like, yeah, everyone knew that. I thought you had worked this out. So Jaina, in typical impulsive Jaina fashion, runs off to Tatooine to help her uncle Luke, but he doesn't really need her help. And even Lando picks up on the fact of like, Jaina, I think you are sort of on an emotional roller coaster right now, but, you know, help in the way that you see best. And the slavery plotline really comes out of left field here. The only foreshadowing that we got seemed to be in the previous book in Backlash, that one Jedi Knight being very concerned about the state of slavery in the galaxy. Referring back to the Essential Reader's Companion gave me the information that this was not something in the original plan for the series, that as they were working on the books, they were like, oh, well, this will give the Jedi something to rally behind, and this definitely strikes me as a subplot that was added later in planning, but we'll save that for the issues bit. Over on the Jedi-Sith alliance, Luke agrees to an alliance like right away, and Ben's like, you agreed to that? And Luke's like, look, Ben, I don't trust them, and it's easier to keep my eye on them when they're right here. Which, fair enough. And also I felt like maybe the Jedi working with the Sith would be good, because it could almost give the Jedi a situation where they can live their best Jedi life and sort of show the Sith, in particular Vestara, who I feel like is the Sith who could be influenced the most, show them, hey, this is what being a Jedi's like. Isn't this better than the dark side? And so I think that does carry over to a certain extent in the dynamic between Ben and Vestara, that Vestara says outright to her dad, yeah, I really like Ben. Like, he's a good guy. Like, he's nice. He's fun to be around. But of course, the Sith take the approach of, well, then you need to seduce him to the dark side, and if you can't do that, you need to kill him. And Vestara definitely takes the approach of like, oh, I'm a cute teenage girl. Hi, Ben. Your jokes are funny. Oh, tell me about that. And I'm not sure if push came to shove that Vestara, at this point especially, would be willing or able to kill Ben. But it doesn't even get to that point, because Luke records Vestara and her father discussing things in the language of Kesh. He sends it off to 3PO, who translates it. I mean, it's a pretty rough translation, but it works. And from that point on, Ben is much more standoffish with Vestara, because he's heard what her father discussed with her, and he doesn't like being played like that. And I think in that same way that we have this relationship developing between Ben and Vestara, so then we have pages devoted to them, that almost in a reverse of what happened in book number 3 in Abyss, I felt like there was more time spent with Ben and Vestara and less time spent with Luke up until we get to Abeloth's planet, in which point it's like all Luke, because we have that revelation of Abeloth consumed Callista. It gives us an ending for Callista, because honestly, we haven't seen her since Planet of Twilight. And it's a sad ending to know that she got sucked into this and swallowed up by this evil being, and that she's gone now. I think too, Luke wanting to return to the River of the Dead shows us how much Luke is still not over Mara's death, that the thought of being able to talk with her again, you know, is that her spirit? Is that not her spirit? It seemed like her. And that's the first thing he wants to do when they land on Abeloth's planet, is go to the River of the Dead. He says it's because we saw Abeloth in the mist, but I really think it is because he just wanted to talk to his wife one more time. And the Sith lie to Luke to form an alliance, say that they want to go to Abeloth to deal with Abeloth, but there is a part of them that's like, well, maybe we could use her to our best advantage. But I think once confronted with her, even the Sith who's in charge of the expedition, Lord Talon, realizes this is just a straight up evil being. That might not work out. Luke wanted to go to Abeloth and reason with her, and that's a no-go. And I think the Sith vague plan of utilizing Abeloth is also a no-go. So it definitely feels like in the next book we will learn more about the nature of Abeloth, because it does seem like she was trapped on this planet, that Sinkhole Station and even Kessel in a way were designed to keep her there, that she is needy and she wants to use people and consume them. And that's why the Mindwalkers were on Sinkhole Station, and that's why she was trying to draw the Jedi who had been children on the secret Jedi base back to her, that there's this urge to consume and dominate. And yeah, Luke killing her when she was trying to feed on Dion, I 100% do not think it's going to be that easy, and because she seems like this eldritch monster, that we will definitely see her claw her way back to the land of the living in some way or other. So my first issue with Allies was that it just felt badly edited. we had characters' names repeatedly misspelled, like Dion Stodd's name was spelled like this the whole book. Kype Duran was spelled Kype Duran. And with this slavery subplot where we specifically have the Chevins enslaving the Chevs, in the chapter where the Deveronian reporter is there covering that, who is the slavers and who's the slaves is mixed up more than once. We have the slavers referred to as Chevs and the slaves as Chevins, when Chevins look like this and Chevs look like this. I know their names are very similar and they've gotten mixed up before, like in Destiny's Way and the New Jedi Order, but they really don't look the same. And it is very important here in a subplot all about stopping slavery that you make sure you know who the slavers are and you get it right. My second issue was that at times allies did have this young adult feel to the story, not to the extent that I think Omen had, but I did sometimes feel it here. And I wonder again if it's just that prominence of Ben and Vestara's characters that we're covering 16-year-olds, and not just 16-year-olds, but 16-year-olds who might have feelings about each other. And it just leads to the story having a more juvenile tone than I would like or would expect from a Star Wars novel. I mean, I think the only way to really do away with those, this feels like YA tone comparisons, would just be to lessen the amount of Ben and Vestara in the story. And I don't want that because I love Ben. He's such a good kid. And Vestara is the most interesting of these new Sith to me. I think because she's smart and she wants to learn and grow. And she's also the most receptive to what the Skywalkers have to say. So you're reading it and you're like, she's Sith, she uses the dark side, but she has this loving relationship with her family that you just want her to achieve better things. And you want, Ben to be able to bring her to the light side. Finally, my third issue with allies was, yes, that slave uprising subplot that just really got cranked up to 11 here and had not been foreshadowed in any of the previous books. And I think this is an example where I think this would have worked better if it had been alluded to and part of the narrative from the beginning. And I know that this is a consequence of the authors working on the books, the authors getting a certain extent into the books and being like, oh, well, this would be cool. This would be something that we should touch on. And then this could be another thing where the Jedis are aligned with the slaves who are uprising and Daala's on the side of using the military to end these slave uprisings. And you could see, have everyone turn against her and okay, cool. But that does really make Daala less three-dimensional than I would like. It's a lot of the book here, and it does feel like it just comes up out of nowhere because we haven't had it building through the previous 4 books. I do think it feels better integrated into the story than, say, Padme trying to stop slavery on Tatooine in Queen's Shadow was. Padme, don't buy slaves and then free them. That's just encouraging people to sell slaves. So in short, Allies sees the Skywalkers making new and surprising allies to confront Abeloth. She seems to be defeated for now, but I think we'll see her come back. But it is interesting that her death, if it was her death, seemed to lead to the maddened young Jedis regaining their sanity, which was very welcome to me just because as more ones became crazy that we had never heard of before, I was just like, oh, okay, I hope this gets solved soon. I like Ben and Vestara and the dynamic between them that's developing. I'm hoping that Jaina figures out her relationship drama soon because Jaina, this is too much relationship drama for me. and I'll be interested to see how this stalemate between Daala and the Jedi Order is resolved. So next time, I'm going to be reading the 6th book in the Fate of the Jedi series, Vortex by Troy Denning.